Hi, I'm Mayor Mike Walsh, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mayor's Corner, being brought to you from the Crest Family Library in downtown De Pere. This is a monthly program where we will be providing you with information about city programs, pertinent issues, and things that may be of interest within the community. I will be interviewing individuals in an effort to give a first-hand perspective of concepts, ideas, and involvements of a particular subject. Our topic today is Seeds for De Pere, and my guest is Randal Rake, the group's chairperson. Welcome, Randy. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Randy, what do the letters SEED stand for, and what exactly is the organization Seed for De Pere?
Seeds for De Pere stands for Social, Ecological, and Economic Development, and those are the three pillars of sustainability that we try to promote. And our group came together about 5 years ago. There's a bunch of like-minded people that got together. There's a couple city council members, teachers, some professors from St. Norbert's, and like-minded citizens that decided that we wanted to try to develop De Pere in a sustainable fashion.
How long ago did you say that was?
It's been about 5 years since we first met. Yep.
Have you evolved into what you anticipated it might be?
Yes, it's been going pretty well. We're a small group. We started maybe with 15 people, and that's gone down to about 8 that have really stuck with it. So we started with a few smaller projects, and now we started to do some larger projects in the area now that we've got some footing and some base to work from.
How exactly did you become involved, and what is your background?
My background is I'm an X-ray tech, actually, and then I got into medical research, cardiac research. And when I met my wife and we got married and had kids, and then I was a stay-at-home father. So when we moved to De Pere about 12 years ago, we bought an old house on Broadway, and we saw our energy use in that house and how it was uncomfortable. And from there we went and upgraded the house, insulated, air sealed, things like that, and we saw how much money we were saved and how much more comfortable the house was. So those kind of steps we took ourselves. And then we actually went in to add renewable energy to our house too. And I'm very ecologically conscious of what our family does and how we go out in the world and what our footprint is going to be left behind. So it all kind of came together and as an example, and I had the leadership skills that the people in the group wanted, so I eventually became the chairperson.
Well, I know those older homes can really eat up the energy, and I can see how you would be able to see the difference once you put some of those practices into play.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the efficiency measures paid off pretty immediately. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's always great to save money, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's nice to save an old house too.
Sure.
There's a lot of this De Pere area has a lot of those types of houses, so if people keep them up and upgrade them as we go along, it's very nice for the community.
Right. It's such a nice area down on Broadway there. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sustainability and sustainable development are terms that people use a lot. Could you explain what they mean and how they're used?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sustainability is a pretty big word, and a lot of people have a hard time understanding it. It can get lumped in with green practices and words like that. But basically what we're trying to do is realize that we live on a small planet with limited resources, and things that we do now and actions we take now will have an effect in the future, whether we're conserving those resources for future generations or we're developing new ways and methods of doing things that won't have an impact in the future.
I'm sure that there are reasons for them, but why should sustainable practices be adopted?
Sustainable practices should be adopted because in North America, we developed our society based on a limited amount of those resources, whether it be water resources or fossil fuels, and there's only so much of that available. So if we continue to use those at the pace that we are and our population continues to grow, then the human population is going to start to suffer at some point because we won't have those resources in order for human life to keep going in our present state.
So people decide to adopt sustainable practices. Are there any guidelines that need to be followed at all, Randy?
Sustainability or sustainable practices are broken into 4 guidelines. And the first one is what we take from the earth, and that's mostly focused on fossil fuels. So we need to reduce the use of fossil fuels. The second one is what we make from the earth, and those would be all substances that we take out of the earth, whether it be through mining or any of those types of practices. And when we take those out, what's the consequences of those? It could be dangerous chemicals like lead, mercury, and there could be things that we produce also made out of the earth, like chemicals and pesticides and those types of things. The third one is to preserve nature as it is. This could be wetlands. In urban areas, it could be having open spaces, parks, things like that. And the fourth guideline is how we treat each other and how we meet each other's needs. It's very important that we all know that we're a human society and we all need each other, and how we meet our basic needs is very important in the whole process.
Can you give us any examples of what an individual can do to comply with some of these guidelines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 4 guidelines are pretty higher up thoughts, but in just simple daily practices, one practice we like to promote is bringing a grocery bag back to the store. If you think way back to how that bag was produced and how it got to you, you can see what an amazing amount of energy it takes for a paper or a plastic grocery bag to get into your hand. From production, where do those materials come from? To produce it, the energy it takes to produce it. It's being packaged and shipped. It has to be shipped to the grocery store. There's all these steps and processes. When it gets to the grocery store, you have people there that are handling it, moving it out to the front of the store, and then they're giving you a bag. And you take that bag and you take it home. What do you usually do with it? You shove it in a cupboard, and then eventually, after 3 or 4 years, you have a couple hundred bags in your closet, and you take them and you throw them away. So it was kind of a single-use item that you don't really use again and again. So reusing a bag, taking that bag back to the grocery store, a lot of them will even give you a nickel for it. That's your incentive to reuse it.
So is there, is that better than doing the recycling?
Mm-hmm. Anytime you can go back to the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. So if you reduce your use and reuse a product over and over again till its useful life is worn out, and then eventually recycle it as the last step, you've complied with the 4 guidelines of sustainability in most cases.
Okay. You hear a lot of times that plastic bags are not good for the environment, as you've already mentioned, but yet there are more and more of them out there. I think SEEDs even has a bag monster that they kind of send around to different events to kind of promote either reusing the bags or getting rid of them, I guess. First of all, why is it so widespread? And second, are there any ways to curb their usage? Or should they be curbed?
I think bag use is so high because it's so easy. When you go to a grocery store and they just give you one, and it's humans move through their lives in the most easiest fashion that's possible. So if someone's giving you something, you usually just accept it instead of saying, if you have a tube of toothpaste and a dozen eggs and someone says you'd like to put them in a bag for you, you probably say yes, instead of just carrying them out in your hands.
Well, I know I always carry a cloth bag with me in the car, but I think I'm kind of like a lot of people. I tend to leave it there.
Yep.
You go in and it's like, well, do you really want to go back and get it? And we probably should be doing that, but I always do ask for paper when I go in, so I hope I'm doing something. Yeah,
there's always a debate of how much energy does it take to make a paper bag versus plastic, but paper is a natural substance and it will break down in nature eventually. In the landfill, it's going to take a long time because it's usually compressed and smashed and the air can't get to it to break it down, but it will break down versus a plastic bag. A true plastic bag will exist in some form forever. So.
Well, I think the plastic bag, I think the reason people or stores use them so much is that they're cheaper and a lot more available. And I know you go to some stores and you get like 20 bags with 2 things in it. You know?
Yep. And there you're weighing the price of something up front versus the long-term consequences of it. I mean, you can use the bag scenario for a lot of different discussions for sustainability. So,
well, I think whatever's going on as far as education goes, our children are becoming more and more aware of the plastic bag and what it does to the environment. because at least once or twice a year, I get letters from the kids in middle school or elementary school saying, you know, what can you do to help get them out of the environment? And sometimes it's whether or not we can ban them and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think it would be very difficult to do something like that unless you went statewide, because there are chains out there and of stores that really use it quite a bit.
Yep, it's up to your citizens to kind of step forward and say, we're just going to change our behavior. That's the easiest way to do it, is to decide, I'm going to take a bag with me in my car. I'm going to remember to take it with me when I go into the store, and you've kind of eliminated the whole process. The reward/punishment system for bags is always hard. You could do, you get your 5-cent reward for bringing a bag in, but also the store's going to charge you 5 cents if you need to use a bag. So that's kind of a way to do it that way too. Some countries have banned bags. China, which isn't the best example for government and the way that they make people do things, but they've banned plastic bags there, and also Ireland has. So, and there hasn't been a giant change in their society that it's been detrimental to them. So,
well, maybe there's hope with the younger children being ingrained with them a little bit. Maybe they'll be able to fight that fight when they get a little bit older, because they're a lot more aware than, say, people my age. Or so I think the future kind of looks a little bright for that anyway.
Yep. And you can even think back when grocery bags kind of came into existence. Not too far ago, you'd go to the grocery store and they'd take one of their cardboard boxes that something came in, they put your items in that, and you take that with you instead, and then the whole bag process got started. So,
sure.
Yep.
What can we do in our households in order to follow some of the guidelines?
Households are a great place to make changes. You can look at your energy use, you can look at what you bring into the house from the store, kind of what food you buy, those types of things. So really simple things like we did at our house. We just looked at our energy use, and energy use is nice because you can track it. Every month you're going to get a bill from the electric company. It tells you how much electricity you've used, and it tells you how much gas you've used in your house. So it's a nice system to track, and you can get a nice checklist, and you can go through and you can follow through on different things. So the easiest, very simple step right now is to change your light bulbs. The compact fluorescents save a lot of money, and the price of those have come down in recent years, so there's really no reason not to change those light bulbs out. And then the next step will be the LEDs. They'll come along next. So,
well, I know the city is looking at doing a lot of that. We've investigated putting LED lights on the bridge, and have contacted public service about doing them in the on the streets. Are there any other ways that maybe a city can become more sustainable? De Pere especially is almost ripe for sustainability because we have the old downtown area that was a little more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. And then as the city's been developing, they've been putting in more sidewalks, more bike lanes. The roundabouts are a great example of sustainability. There's no stop and go, which wastes fuel. Traffic keeps flowing. That's a sustainable practice in a city. The city's also taken the lead on road maintenance with their ice system. They no longer spread salt. They use the brine system, and brine reduces the amount of salt that you use, and also I believe it has a better effect on the road itself in breaking down the snow and the ice and making the roads safer. So it's also a very good cost savings for the city too, because we used to spend a lot of money on salt, and we would just spread it on the streets and just with salt alone, and now combining it with the brine has really saved the city money. Granted, we've had a really decent winter this year, but with what we did last year and this year, we're tracking it a lot, and we've seen a big change even in the mild winter. So.
Yeah, and it's a win for everybody in that instance where you're saving money and you're saving the environment, and you're making it better for everyone. It's fair to everybody, and your result is being used for everyone.
So Randy, is it practical for businesses to really change to paper? I know in some instances, especially in the fast food industry, they use plastic containers for takeout. Do you think that that is advantageous or coming about in the future?
Mm-hmm. If you travel different parts, even in Wisconsin, if you go to Door County, and we're talking about if you order too much food at a restaurant and you get a small box, what should that box be composed of that you get to take home with you? And a lot of places will give you a styrofoam container versus a paper container. And you'll see in Door County, where they're a little more sustainability minded, that almost every place that you go into will give you a little cardboard or paper box instead of a styrofoam box. And paper has its advantage because it breaks down in the environment versus styrofoam. Once it's created and made by man, it's never going to break down again. So, and it's a simple step for a restaurant to take. I don't have a price comparison, but it's just who they're going to order it from. Are they going to order a paper product, or are they going to order a styrofoam product? And if you think about paper in Northeast Wisconsin, we're a paper area, so you're supporting your neighbors and your businesses in that way too by using paper products.
Well, it certainly makes sense for the economy, but I guess from the practicality standpoint, they usually use plastic or styrofoam for keeping the food warmer and keeping it from leaking, whereas with the paper it might leak a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. And it's a possibility. They could always underline it with a piece of wax paper or something like that if you're worried about something falling out. But the cardboard containers are usually fairly sturdy and thick, so I think they'd hold in the heat pretty well.
I've heard that there's a new process that's being developed, and maybe you haven't heard about it, but you can take all the garbage from fast food and recycle it into a kind of paper or paper board. Mm-hmm. If that comes about, that should kind of help alleviate some of the concern, or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, waste streams are very important in sustainability and learning about sustainability. That's kind of what you create and then what you do with it at the end point. So whether it's trash to energy or trash to a different product, anytime you can take that loop of what man has created and keep it from going to an end point of it's being wasted, if you can reuse it in some way to make energy or make another product out of it, you're usually complying with the sustainability guidelines.
I know in the past year, SEEDs has taken on and completed a major project right here in the Crest Library. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Since we formed, we've always had the idea of we need a place to give information to the community, and we needed a public place to do it. So the idea of using the library and partnering with the library came up, and we needed a way to draw people to the library and give them a reason to come and visit. And what we came up with was installing a large renewable energy project. And so it took about 2 years, and we raised enough money, and we actually installed a fairly large solar electric system on the library, 20 kilowatt system. And it fit in with Brown County and the library's processes. They had gone through efficiency measures with their heating and cooling systems and building systems, and they upgraded them and made changes, and they brought their energy use down quite a bit. So piggybacking on that story of how to make your building better, your existing building improvement, with a renewable energy project really brought it all together and tells a nice story of simple steps that people can take to reduce energy use in buildings.
Is it too soon, or have there been any tracking of this?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the system's available online, and you can track it there. It's been performing as expected over the winter months pretty well. The library itself has brought its energy use down substantially just through those simple measures of being more efficient. And the cost to benefit ratio on those was extremely high. For solar electric, it's going to take a while to get those numbers back, but the system itself will produce about 12% of the library's electricity for the year. So it's a fair amount, and it's clean, renewable energy, and the system's on the roof. There's no noise. There's none of those. You can have fights about wind turbines, about all sorts of different things, but solar electric on a roof is, I think part of the problem might be that it's so unnoticeable that people don't know it's there.
Well, I know it seems like a very worthwhile project, and it may draw more attention to the sustainable practices. Are there any other projects like this in Wisconsin?
There's a few smaller library projects. I know the Milwaukee Library, they have a solar array, and they also did a green roof up there to absorb the water off the roof, and they have some plants on the roof on that one. There's a small library near Viroqua too that has a solar electric array on it. So this is probably one of 3 projects that I know in Wisconsin that have a renewable energy project, and then we've also developed an educational aspect to go along with the project too. And what we've created within the library is an educational kiosk, and we call that the Sustainability Learning Center. So we'd like to draw people here and learn with them and give them some ideas on how they can make simple changes in their lives and promote sustainability in our community.
Are there any assets close to the library that can be shared?
Yeah, one of the nice things about the Crest Library location was what's around it, and what we have, thinking in sustainable ways, is we have a nice old downtown area, and historic buildings and downtowns like that are extremely sustainable because they're already built. So that was a nice location for us to be with. We also have Voyager Park, which is really close, which used to be a factory and a dump site for industry, and that's been reclaimed and is now used as a public park. We have the Fox River, which was polluted with PCBs and still is polluted with PCBs, but there's the whole environmental cleanup that's gone along with that. So that was a nice tie-in to help tell the story also. And then the city has taken the initiative to bring the river kind of back in, and started with the Riverwalk and the wildlife viewing pier. So that's a nice tie-in with the Learning Center and the location of everything all tying together.
What is in place at the Learning Center now, and what does the future hold for it?
And what we started with to develop was a kiosk. There's some pamphlets and brochures and checklists that people can come and take. And we have a monitor up on the wall that has about a 5-minute movie, kind of goes over why we undertook the project and the installation of the solar array, and also gives you those sustainability concepts reinforced once again, and ideas that you can take home with you and changes you can make. We have that in place now. We're developing a touch screen that you can come and explore some sustainability concepts and see some videos, and there's some nice artwork out there that gives you the concept of how much you use of things and what it really means. And then we're working on curriculum in schools. There's a lot of environmental curriculum in schools and things like that. There's a little bit of electricity curriculum and solar electric, but we wanted to kind of package that into a sustainability curriculum. Kids will learn in the schools, and then they'll come to the library and experience what we have here and then in the surrounding area to see a tangible real-life example of what the process is.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot on your plate coming up. It kind of goes along with what else is in the future for SEEDs.
Mm-hmm. Since we have the Learning Center established now, we like to feed off of that, and a Boy Scout actually stepped up last year, and he was interested in doing a native plant garden. So we partnered with the city and with him, and we're going to have a native plant garden out in Voyager Park right here. So that was our next step for next year, and it tied in nicely with the Learning Center and the library.
Good. You had mentioned a little bit earlier about green roofs. I know that's starting to become prominent around the nation and around the state a little bit. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
Mm-hmm. I know there's a really good example at, I believe, St. Vincent's Hospital. They have a nice green roof up there, and they turned that into a garden for the patients also to come and enjoy and relax while they're in for treatment. So green roofs, what they do is they absorb a lot of that heat and energy from the sun in the summer and don't let it get into the building. And also it's taking that runoff from rainfalls, instead of it just running right off a roof and going out. It absorbs a lot of that water and slows the process down, so the water isn't running right off the land and back into the rivers. It's being reabsorbed into the area and being used, and then eventually it makes its way back out.
I know the city was approached a couple of years ago about having a business located in the community, and they were going to have a green roof. And we were pretty excited about it, but the business didn't come to fruition, so we're kind of hoping someone else will step up and do that. So it's a pretty exciting project once it gets going.
Yep, and those examples, when people go forward and they understand the benefits of it and they're willing to invest in that and they see long-term benefits, are great examples to everyone.
Sure. Do you have any areas that you may be looking for of either expertise or volunteers?
We're always looking for people that have knowledge of sustainability or have that drive and desire to promote sustainable practices, whether it be environmentalists or other teachers, even regular citizens. A lot of times we need volunteers for events and stuff like that. So, yep, we're always looking for help.
So if people are interested in getting involved, or if they'd like more information about SEEDs, do you have any website or email or any other way they can communicate with you?
Yep, the easiest way is to visit our website, which is DePereSeeds, DePereSeeds.com. And you can sign up there on our email list, or you can send us an email and say you want to be more actively involved. And that's the easiest way to contact us.
Along those same lines, how many are actually in your group?
There's about a dozen that are dedicated volunteers. It's all volunteer. There's no paid administration. Everyone donates their time to the group.
So Randy, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I'd like to thank the community for their support in our library project that we've done so far. We couldn't have done it without the volunteers themselves and all the monetary donors. We had support from the city. And just once again, people can take some simple actions in their lives, whether bring a bag back to the store, change your light bulbs. Those kind of simple steps meet all the sustainability guidelines, and they're simple, they're not very expensive, and they might start you down that road to further understand sustainability and what it means to your fellow people that you live with in your community, and then your children and grandchildren in the future.
Well, we're just about out of time, so I'd like to thank Randal Rake for being my guest and providing us with information about SEEDs for De Pere. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
This concludes the Mayor's Corner. This program will be broadcast periodically through the month of March. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Mayor Mike Walsh.